Here we are today. So as you can see behind me, we've got the Specialised Rockhopper Comp FS. Now we've had this on the channel before, and this all kind of falls in line with a few mixing around with bikes that we're doing, a few upgrades and so on. You might remember this. I'll give you a pan around of the frame now. Oh, I'm sure you all remember her. With the nice XT no old stock brakes on there. XT rear derailleur. Still shiny, to be fair, still looking sweet, still looking nice. Then obviously we had the setup on the handlebars, and then we also did a build on the Indy forks as well, a rebuild. So looking beautiful still, but time to upgrade her. So yeah, you might remember, you might not, but there's a quick kind of like pan around of the actual bike itself. So we are going to actually give her, well, we'll always give them a polish up anyway, but we're basically going to have to drop down the whole of the front end's got to come off, including the brakes, because we're replacing the headset. Now at the moment it's got a Ritchie Logic headset in it. It's a little bit old, still runs nice, a little bit worn on the actual Logic and Ritchie. It's not bad, it's not bad, it's okay, it's okay. But we like to do with these bikes, we like to give them just that little bit of love and so on. So we have got the Logic brand new no old stock, the SCSI headset. So we're going to put a SCSI headset in there. Yeah, it's quite nice, to be fair, nice and fresh. So we're going to put that in there, but we're also, while we're doing the headset, we're also going to put a different stem on, different crank. Now it was quite a while ago when I did this bike, so I can't exactly remember specifically what wheel set was on it when I first built it, but we are also going to put on the wheel set that's going to kind of upgrade this as well. And also following on from that, if you watched the last video on the orange, we took off because this wasn't part of the deal that I got, so we wanted that off that bike to go on this one, which makes this one obviously all XT, because it's got one of the older Specialised cranks on there. So we're going to pimp out this one, but as you can see, the chain rings are a little bit dirty, so we're going to pull them off, throw them in the parts washer. And strangely enough, it's got two Shimano bolts in there, and then two random kind of horrible ones. So the chainring bolts aren't matching. However, what I'm going to do for my friend Joe is, so there's one, there's another. Now this one is actually one of mine out of my parts bin, and as you can see, I've got 4 matching bolts in there. Now my crank arm is a bit knackered, and I don't have the non-drive crank arm to match that, so that is a spare. So I'm basically going to give him the 2 bolts out of that, so he's got 4 matching bolts in that one, and then give that one a nice spruce up, bit of a polish, bit of a clean. So we need to strip that down as well. So all in all, I'll get to this stem in a bit, that's beautiful. I'll show you the wheels in a bit, they're beautiful. I've got a few other bits I want to do on here as well, because there's a few speckles of rust. Now I've not really shown it, I've shown rust proofing internally, but what do you do with the external rust? So we're going to get to that as well. So first off, what we need to do is we're basically gonna wrap some protect the frame so nothing can swing down and stuff like that. Got to drop off the brakes, and then we'll start dropping off all the handlebar stuff to do that headset. And then once the headset's in, we can start rebuilding that whole front end, and I'm sure she will look absolutely dialed in afterwards. So there's a few other bits, but we'll get to that later on in the video. If you've only just tuned in for the first time on the video, thanks for stopping by. Hope you enjoy the process in making these old bikes look amazing, and this is one of the nice ones, like steel's real. Anyway, let's crack on with this front end. Well, we're going to strip off the front end, And the reason being, there's just going to be a lot less going on there when it comes around to knocking out that headset and so on. I am going to drop out this cable first off from there. Now the thing is, the original rims that was on it, bless you, the original rims that was on it was not as wide, so the ones that we are putting on it are a little bit wider. So what that means is when the brakes are in, basically the cable is basically not long enough, so we'll have to do a bit of rejigging there as well with that. Maybe we'll have to put some new inner cables in on the actual bike. I forgot that they're different size, so get the right size bolts. So get all these whipped off, loosen them off. So we'll get these off and then jump to the next bit. So with the front brakes off, we can now move on to removing other bits. So on this bike, I actually had some really nice Specialised end caps. So we'll slide that out. And basically they're just a little bit aluminium end caps, but if that will show on there, will it show? It might not focus, but basically they have like Specialised engraved around the edge, so they're super nice. So the Ritchie grips, these are generally brand new, so they're obviously the foam ones, so we don't really want to kind of damage them. Now as always, I always listen to kind of feedback, and this is a whole process of like learning, perfecting your skills a little bit and all the rest of it. Now it's always been a bit of a pain to get kind of handlebar grips off, especially with nice bars. You don't kind of want to scratch. So obviously we've got some isopropanol in there, and then basically spray it in. And basically on a while back, someone basically said on one of the videos is like using a knitting needle or like a kind of a skewer stick. So that's basically what I've got. I've got a barbecue, and I use this all the time now, basically in the shed when taking grips off, because it generally doesn't scratch the bars. So, and I can just generally kind of like just twist it as it's going round, and then make sure I'm getting obviously a bit more kind of isopropyl in there, and basically work that around all the way. And then obviously it doesn't kind of cause any kind of scratching or anything like that. So can't remember who gave me that tip, but if you watch this video, appreciate you. So as you can see, a bit noisy, but yeah, just basically work that around until it frees up, and then you can see there that kind of now moves. So look at that, no marks to that bar whatsoever, and that's come off. Obviously that isopropanol will evaporate now, so then by the time I've changed the headset, because that's another thing, with the stem being changed, obviously this is the standard mount on there, so I can take them off. But the thing is, with the new stem, we've actually got to slide the handlebar one part of the way through. So in doing that, I'm going to basically drop out the front brake cable, just so I haven't got that banging around. So that is just simply just dropped out along that line, and there's that. So we'll set that aside, and then basically I'm going to drop that shifter off, and hopefully that should come straight off, and then we can, that can rest nicely down there. And then now it's a case of taking those 4 bolts out, and then strap up and wrap up that handlebar there, and then we can knock out the headset. So I'll take the handlebars off, and we'll start getting this headset swapped over to the new one, and then I can show you the new stem that we're putting in this bike, because it is going to make such a big difference for the look of the bike as well. So whew, it's a bit hot in here today. Sun's definitely out in England, that's for sure. Right, let's make some magic happen. Now with the handlebars, as you can see, I've made sure that they're like covered there and they're strapped up. Then obviously you don't want to make sure, well, you do want to make sure that anywhere where they can become contact, you kind of just wrap up really. So what I might actually do is I might actually just disconnect these cables, because then I can basically move this along just a little bit more. So if I just disconnect these, because there's nothing actually in there, so let me just tap. It's the thing with the older bikes, the ferrules can get stuck ever so slightly, but now I've just disconnected that, what I can do is move that along and move that totally out of the way so it's safe. So now that gives me full access around that area without any kind of interaction with handlebars, stems and things like that. So we'll whip off these, and then this should be quite just off. Plus, not only that, because basically when I first built this, it was basically a full strip down and rebuild anyway, it should basically all come apart relatively still nice, still greased, with no major issues. So get that off, slide that off. Always remember, once you've taken that off, always keep hold of the forks, because you don't want the forks to just go doof. And if it's anything like today, I'm not wearing any shoes whatsoever. Probably not a good thing for a workshop, but I'm trying to be careful. So that little cheese wedge has been a bit of a pain. So with the cheese wedges, I'm just going to use just basically a little pick, and I'm basically just going to pop that cheese wedge up a little bit, and then that's the forks out. So they can go down there. Then we'll take the rest of this headset out. So I can see there the red headset's still all greased, still looking absolutely fine. It's all about upgrades. So what we'll do is we'll now knock out them cups. So now the one I've got, so that's a cup remover. Now it's a bit old and it's seen better days. So when I was at work, I actually borrowed this one, which I've got to take back on Monday. So this one is a nice fix in there. So we'll knock out these cups. Came out beautiful. So that's why I always say, when you're putting cups in, just put a bit of copper slip around, just because you don't want kind of anything to like rust to the actual frame. So if it does come later on down the line to removing your headset to upgrade or replace, it does make that process a lot easier. So and we'll do the top one. So and there goes that one. Now you do have to be careful doing that, because you don't want the cup to bounce up and then hit your top tube and then put a ding in it. So always be careful on that one. So that's the front end totally stripped out. So let's get the new headset in. So we're going to get the new cups in. As you can see, even though we knocked it out, still putting that just one more little layer of copper slip around that internal head cup there. Again, just making sure, because likelihood is this will probably be an headset that will probably last. This probably won't get replaced again during, well, it probably will, to be fair, because given what we've done to the bike with all the rust proofing and everything like that, it'll probably live another 30 years absolutely fine. So so if we drop these out, as you can see, with the SCSI headset. So that's the SCSI Logic Pro. The big difference with these headsets is it actually has sealed bearings in there. So obviously that is a lot more waterproof, a lot more smoother running. So that is generally a really nice upgrade to this bike. So I'm going to get these cups in, and I'm going to pay particular attention of actually getting the writing lined up lovely on the front. And then the top cup, again, literally just says Ritchie Logic, SCSI Logic. So I'll pop these cups in, just them two, because you've seen me fit headsets loads of times. So I'll speed through this bit now. Well, as you can see, that is the cups in. So even though it's sealed bearings, I'm still going to put a bit of grease in and around on the inside of them cups, again creating those barriers away from the elements. So get a bit of grease all around there. So the top bearing I can pretty much just put straight in, ready. There we are. And then basically just rub a bit of grease in and around that seal, again just to create them barriers away from the elements. There we are, beautiful. And then the bottom bearing, obviously we need to do the crown race on the fork, so let's get to that one. Now, crown races are one of those jobs that can be an absolute pain in the absolute bum. Now, for a lot of them, like Hope and things like that, a lot of them have like a line in the middle. So as you may have seen on some other videos, you can just push them straight down on top, and then when you need to replace them, you can just basically just pop them up and then pull them straight off. This one is obviously a solid crown race. Now, sometimes it is a little bit easier because on the back of some forks you do have like a little bit of a gap. So if you do need to kind of knock it, then that's fine. A lot of the traditional kind of crown race pullers are like a big tube that slides over the top. You get two clamps, and then most of the time when you tighten the top, they pop off. Now the problem is with them is when these are super tight, you can basically like bend your tool out, which happened to me. So I looked at other options. I've got two options that I could use for this one. One being a cheap tool like that. As you can see, it tapers, and now with this, and that will work on like 1 inch and 1 1/8, and then that you basically knock in, and because of those wedges, it drives underneath that. Now with that, you do have to be careful with that to make sure that you don't kind of damage any kind of marks or anything on the actual crown of the fork. So that's that one. That's like last case scenario for me. But I did purchase one of these. Now you do get kind of like the cheap kind of like £20 ones off eBay, and they're crap. So if you're going to get one, pay like 40, I think it's like 45 to 50 pound for the ice tools. Now this is quite a good one, this ice tools one. And you basically put that over. As you can see, you've got the tapers and the grippers on there. They're quite sharp, so they will get underneath that, and then it's just a simple bolt tighten. So with this one, it's quite simple. You would generally slide it over, loosen them a little bit. So you'd slide that over like so, and you want to tighten these kind of ends up equal, so that one's equal to that one. And then basically, so it sits like that. And then, lost an Allen key. Now these don't need to go super tight, especially if it's already kind of sitting just underneath that kind of crown race anyway. So once they've just been nipped up ever so slightly, that's now gripped underneath that crown race. And always be careful using hammers. And I'll always say use the rubber end, and then it shouldn't take much to kind of knock this down, so you kind of just want to be gentle with it, and then basically there you go. Right, so you can see there just a couple of taps and that is now loosened off that crown race a little bit. So I'll nip these up a bit more. And the reason I'm nipping these up a bit more is not because I've tapped it and they've worked loose. It's basically because that crown race is moved up by a couple of mil. If you can see in there, maybe. So, a couple more taps. There you go, look, see that crown race coming off? And watch your toes. Now, like I said a minute ago, I'm not wearing shoes, so that was lucky for me. Nearly lost a toe. Right, so that is that crown race now off. Super efficient. Like I say, for the sake of 45, 50 quid, the big ones, like I say, they're like 200, 300 pound plus. I'd never waste my money on them again when that one works so well. And that one's last case scenario. So, not bad with those. And there's a crown race. So that one is off. So we'll pop that over there. However, the reason that was relatively quite easy is because when we fitted these forks to this bike, because these originally didn't come on that when we first got the bike, is I basically put some copper slip around where that crown race sits. So I'll do the exact same again. And that's all that is. Just a bit of copper slip. Just stops them kind of, that steel like seizing onto the steel. And then there's the replacement crown race. So we'll slip that over. And as you can see, it gets to about there and it's tight. So we'll need the tools. Let me just grab the tools. Here we are. So with the crown race fitting tool, it's basically a pipe that will allow you to smack the headset on. But you do get different fittings that will suit different crown races and so on. As you can see, this one's tapered. So I'm going to use the tapered tool. That will sit nice and flush on that taper. And when I put that over like that, and I hit it, now, you know when you don't have to hit these massively hard. Like I say, always make sure you've got a bit of copper slip on there. You want it nice and square, nice and firm, and tap it. When it's bottomed out and it's set, you'll hear that kind of ting difference as well in the knocking sound. So there you go. See that? It was like more like a thud noise. So like that. So once you've hit that point, don't keep going. Don't keep just hitting. And you can see that, and always double check to make sure that it is nice and flush all the way around, and that is. So I am super happy with that. Like I say, nice and easy. So after that, what we want to do is a bit of grease. So first off, I'll wipe off that copper slip around there, because you don't want copper slip and grease kind of mixing together. So that's now clear. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put, again, just protecting from the elements, some grease. So when that bearing sits over, it's protected. And then I'll just do a little bit at the top. So any rainwater that kind of tries to get in there, seeps down, it's got a barrier. So, right. Last thing before I jump to actually sliding these in and we'll get to the stem is steel steerers. Now steel steerers will rust over time. So you generally don't want to grease the bit where the stem's going to go. But the bit in the middle, you generally want to put a bit of grease on there. Again, just stops that from rusting. And it's all about prolonging the life of these like retro vintage bikes. So give that just a nice film of grease, don't have to go too mad with it. Like that. Tidy that up so it looks nice. And then same with the top. Obviously you can see there's still a bit of grease in there from last time that I did these. I'm going to make sure that it is just covered on that inside. And I'll just put a little bit of extra in there. So that's the cups in, that's the bearings ready. So now all we need to do is slide these in and then put the stem on. So I'm going to go and get a drink of water because it's super hot. And I'm going to put away a few of these tools, and then I'll flick the camera around and I'll pull the the stem out, and then we'll have a look at the stem. Just before I move on, I think I might divorce Bike Shed Girl. She just said to me, do I want a drink? I said, yep, can it be a cold one? She goes, how about a nice cold beer? I was like, oh, nice cold beer. That was the head all the way up. It's gone down a bit now, but woo. Anyway, let's get to the stem. Getting on to the actual stem, what we are putting on. So we've taken off the Ritchie one, and we're putting on a nice, beautiful Syncross stem. Now that is absolutely immaculate, stunning. Not too far off, same length to be fair, so same length as the one that's coming off, just a bit more beautiful to be fair. So with these obviously Syncross stones, you can see there's a hole there, and that's obviously the bolt and the kind of cheese wedge that tightens up. So if I pull this out, for example, so we've got two fresh bolts in there, so they're both the same. Yeah, both the same. So, and then in here we should have the two kind of like wedges. So one will have the bolt that goes through, and then the other end kind of is like the bolt end, and then you've obviously got those wedges, and that is basically what grips to the actual steerer. Now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to smear a bit of grease around the inside of that, so just a little bit, just where those bushing kind of wedges things generally going to sit, really. Just a little bit in there like that. It's a nice little film of grease, and then obviously so Syncross, so we'll put the bolt head drive side, which that just looks amazing. Then obviously we'll slide that one in, and then we'll just twizzle that nut up a little bit, making sure the wedges are on the inside like that. So then, as you can see, I've already put the forks in, and I've used a toe strap to hold the forks so they don't drop out of the actual frame, as you can see. So a little toe strap just around the crown and around the actual down tube, just holds it, stops it from dropping. Now the question is there a difference in? So there is. So pop them just there. So when we took this off, we had that spacer sitting underneath that stem. Obviously, if you look at the difference, that Syncross stem is a lot bigger. So what that means is we won't need that spacer on here now. So it'll just be the stem straight on, looking beautiful, looking fabulous. So we'll pop that on. We'll line up the Ritchie logo matching the bottom one. And we'll slide that straight on past those wedges. It was like it was built for the actual bike. So then we'll just nip them up ever so slightly so they don't drop off as well, because we've got to get the top cap in. Now, with the top cap, as you can see, it's like at an angle. So you can't just use the original traditional one because it just won't work. What you actually need is kind of like the slanted actual matching syncross one. So that basically drops in, beautiful there. And then we'll drop that bolt in. Basically nip this up. So now that's nipped up, take that off, because that's not going to fall out now. So we'll put that on there. Beautiful. Right, so now that's on, what we need to do now is basically reverse order what we did in the beginning. So slide the handlebars back through and all the rest. So I'll speed run this bit, so see you in a second. Right, what I've noticed here, and this again is something that you might want to know for future reference, is because the stem's no old stock, it's essentially never had bars put through them before. Now, obviously, I can just push these bars through, but equally, you don't want it to scratch any of the kind of branding. So you've just got to be super careful with this as well. And what I tend to find is I'll use a cone spanner the same width as the 2 bolts, or a single bolt, and then basically just open that kind of clamp up a little bit. Right, that's super tight, to be fair. Right, if that's super tight, let's back that off just a smidge. And what we'll do is I'll rest them down there. What I'll do in that case is I've got some FSA full speed ahead. Now I usually use this on carbon, so it's basically like it's a bit like grease, got a slight little bit of kind of like particles in there, like that for example. And that, if I rub a bit of that around there, hopefully this should also allow them bars to slide on a lot nicer as well. You don't want grease, because obviously grease is generally grease. This is designed for like seat post, handlebar, stems, so there's no harm in using it on this. Then hopefully we can do that, which will enable the bars to slide on just a little bit easier. Got something right stuck in my throat today. Right, so let's see if I could just open that up just a bit. They are tight. It's a tight fitting. Alright, let me drop them out. So if that's the case, what I'm going to do is I'm going to get a set of my handlebars, put them through first. There you go. So I've got an old set of Titech handlebars. So I'm going to put them through first because I'm not bothered about scratching them. So even they don't want to go through. Oh. Woo. Well, I've never known a no old stock stem to be this tight, to be fair. Right, they're in. What I'm actually going to do is I'm going to leave them now without the bolts in to kind of set for a bit. Just because I don't want to hit my friend's handlebar through, because as you see on there, it has caused a bit of slight marking to the handlebar. So I might leave them clamped up for a bit, well, leave them like that, and then move on to the next bits. And then hopefully that will kind of set itself and be a little bit better getting them bars in. The bars are in, right. I couldn't get the bars in. Honestly, I couldn't. I needed a third hand. Tried to get Bike Shed Girl in on the action. She just said no. Basically, I had to phone my friend and just be like, look, mate, you're going to have to come down. Don't want to scratch your bars. I need a third hand. I want you to shove the bars in, because then if you scratch them, they're your bars. And it can collaborate that as well. But luckily enough, we actually got the bars in without kind of any marks whatsoever. These this no old stock stem, it just obviously may have just shrunk by 1/2 mil over the years, I don't know, but that was super tight. In the end, what we used was basically bolts out, and then we used, believe it or not, a Holotech tool. Because the bolts are quite far apart there, we needed something that would sit kind of in between them two areas there, just because you didn't want to kind of lever one side up, you wanted to kind of do them both. So he applied a little bit of pressure just to open up that circle just that little bit more, just so we could slide them through nicely, get them aligned up, and get them on. So they're on. I've just basically put the brakes, slid that back on, grip back on, bar end cap back in. So they're on, that's done. That's front end. So next thing we need to do with this one is I'm going to pull the old cranks off, and then what I've already done is I've already polished and replaced the bolts in the crank. So this is what we're looking at so far. So as you can see, they are on and looking absolutely sexy. As you can see, no damage to those handlebars. They're in there lined up perfect. So that's on. I'm going to polish up the forks before we put the wheels on. The wheels are down there, and we also need to take off that crank. Now obviously that's the crank that was originally on it, so I'm going to pull that off, and we're simply going, that should just come off, new crank straight on. So straightforward. And that is that. Pimped out, clean, shiny, and that's on. That looks nice. Kind of goes with everything else that's XT as well. Obviously we've got the hog on this one. Beautiful Ritchie dropouts on this frame as well. Beautiful. So what's left to do? Well, all what's left to do on this one, beard to beard you there, is basically put the new wheels on. Now let me just grab these. Lovely. So wheels that are going on now, as I said earlier on, I couldn't remember exactly what was on this. Now what we're putting on is, obviously we're still keeping the Dart and Smoke as always, but we've got on this one now is the 519 rims with the the RS4 hubs. So a bit of an upgrade on there, a bit of a newer hub, but it don't really take away from the retro kind of feel of the actual bike. Now I think from what memory serves on this one, it used to be the old Hope Tide glides, which unfortunately there's a known fault with those. You get micro fractures on the like the flange cups that meets the titanium central part. I might actually ask him to bring them down, and I might do a separate video on that. So these are going on. I built these for him. These didn't come off the orange C16R, even though the ones that came off the C16R are also the RS4s, but they've got the Mavic SUP rims as well. So slightly different. They're going on a different bike, different build. And then let me show you this. So what's in these wheels at the moment are the newer Hope skewers. So you can see there the design's a lot more chunkier, a lot more fatter. It kind of has like a weird kind of flick there. So we're not putting the new ones on. What we're actually putting on this one are the old school ones that came off the C16R, and as you can see there's a bit of copper slip there from when I took them out the other bike. But these arms are a little bit more kind of flat, nice little ball end on there, a little bit more sleek, a bit more stylish. So you can see the difference. You got the old Ope, new Ope, and then obviously side on. There's a massive difference there. Me personally, I'm not a major fan of the new Hope stuff, but I really like the older domed head Hope stuff. Really fan of that. So these wheels are going to go on. Now the only difference is, and I would probably do a pan around of the bike at the end, is these rims are a couple of mil wider than the original. So when I put these wheels on in a second, I think I'm gonna have to basically fettle around with the inner brake cables. So they'll probably have new inner brake cables on there anyway, just to get that width and the reset up perfect. So on that note, given that this is the last thing to do, I'll get these on. I'll put on a final pan around of the bike once it's done, and then as always I'll say bye to you all. So let me do that. I'll see you for final thoughts, I guess. So lovely. And there we have it. So she's been upgraded. I did give her a final polish down as well. And if you're wondering, because it wasn't as bad as I'd originally thought, mentioned about the rust at the beginning. Like I say, there was a couple of specs, but basically I just used the rust converter. So really small brush, basically just dot that on the spots of rust, let it oxidize. That acts then like a primer, and then basically just basically touched her in with a tiny bit of silver. So can't really see it. Nah, we expect it. Didn't really need doing, but we like to polish up anyway. So on that note, she's done. She is, again, looking sexy. It's one of them, it's like, you know, when a bike comes back, and obviously I built this anyway, stripped it down, I've had my greasy little paws on every part of this bike, every spot of this bike has been touched by me personally. Sounds a bit weird. But you know, when it comes back, but it comes back for even more upgrades, and you can see that kind of like that process of someone else's bike transforming into something that works for them, and the pride and care. It's like, yes, Molly, that's Molly's new favourite apple ball. Basically, it squeals and she's addicted to it. On that note, Molly, do you want to be in the video? She wants to be in the video. Right, Molly, I know I've got your ball, and that's your ball, isn't it? And you love your ball. How badly do you want your ball? Come on, go. You cheeky git. Right, sit. No, that's lay. No, up, up, up. Molly, you're making me look like not a good dog trainer here. Come on. Sit. Paw. Oh, you're getting it all backwards. Look, your brain gets fried when you concentrate on balls too much. Look. Do you like the Specialised? We'll take that as a yes from Molly. There you go. No, don't bring it back. What are you bringing it back to me for? Oh, I've started something now, haven't I? Catch. Yeah, she's on point with them catchers. Well, there you go. That's Molly the Sprolly, mental with a football, and that's the ball. In the last couple of videos, you've heard that noise. So let me know if you get this far down into the video, because a lot of people might not watch till the end. You know, maybe they do. But if you do watch to the end, let me know, because I kind of try to make this one a little bit more educational, if that makes sense. If that's your thing, or you just like to see nice bike stuff, then there's a bit for everyone on these videos. But anyway, moving on to the next one. The thing is, I've got a couple of bikes now where they've all got to be upgraded. And I've got bikes that need to be built. And they're all super nice. We're going to move on to the next one. To be fair, once I take this one in and put this one in the parking spot in the dining room, I'm going to start the next one. So on that note, as always, be kind to each other, and yeah, thanks for tuning in, and I will probably see you, well, I probably won't see you on the next one, but you'll see me on the next one, but I'll talk to you guys in the comments. On that note, I think the weather's gone a bit cold, so I'm going to keep the hoodie on. So yeah, on that note, see you on the next one. Molly in your ball, go on. Nah, she missed it that time. There's a boy with a toolbox fixing them all. Worn out wheels and chains so tight, he's got the magic, makes them run just right. With a wrench in his hand and grease on his face, he's got that smile, it's his favorite place. Every pedal, every gear, he knows the way. Bike shed boy, here to save the day. Bike shed boy, turning the spanners, fixing all the rats, bringing back the manners. From black tires to rusty chains, he'll get you rolling down the lanes. Bike shed boy with his hands so quick, tightening.